Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming today to join us on this Global Day of Parents. My name's Jo Mason and I'm so proud to be your MC today. It's great to join Finn for this annual event. So the Global Day of Parenting, the UN Global Day of Parents, celebrates the vital role that we parents play in shaping the lives of our children. This year has got a particularly relevant theme, which is raising parents. We often assume that we're just born into this role, that we know it from the moment we arrive on the earth. But I think it's really important. We throw around the phrase, there's no handbook for doing this. There's absolutely no handbook for being a parent. However, there is support available, and it's important that we acknowledge that parents and caregivers require time, resources and support in order to raise children, to be able to provide that nurturing and positive environment. It's not something that most of us can do on our own. We know that parenting is a very privileged role, but it's also a really challenging one. So today we will be talking about that support that's available. The theme for today's event is actually hope starts here. Hope is such an important word whenever we're facing challenges. And so today we'll be going on a bit of a journey. We're not going to ignore the challenges and the problems that parenting may face, but we're certainly going to talk about hope and really lean into that positivity as well. Before we begin, very importantly, we have Uncle Stephen Coghill here to provide the welcome to country. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Jo, for that introduction. It was beautiful. Well, good morning, everyone. Does everyone else have trouble with the traffic getting here this morning, like me? So I'm going to stick to the script so I don't get hooked off stage. Let me acknowledge all the distinguished guests here today. You know who you are, and I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the organisers for this Global Day of Parents for organising this event, and also for including the Welcome to Country for in the business of the day. I'm pleased to provide this welcome today on behalf of Aboriginal people of this region who I belong to. I appreciate the conference is significant in addressing issues associated with the community, including First Nations people, of forming developing uniform approaches that translate to well-being, good health and safety in the community, especially with the parenting side. Like Jo was saying, when you become a parent, you don't do any study. Well, I didn't anyway, but I did a lot of study afterwards, I can tell you. Events like these here today contain objectives that community can appreciate and support and get on board with. It's really a benefit to the community and for well-being situations. My connection to this country is through my great-great-grandfather. He was born just over, not far from here, between the GPO and Customs House, and how appropriate that was a birthing place there for Aboriginal people back in the day. So yeah, that's where he was born, and our descendants continued in their living here and connected up with other parts of the country. As a Yuggera elder and Indigenous community person, I can appreciate the challenges over the years, especially over these past years, coming through COVID and then, electricity bills and groceries, carrots 5 cents each. I understand this is even genuine an issue to bring people together to a place of well-being and confidence in the unity and with parenting. We believe, as a Yuggera person, we believe that good faith is a foundation. Good foundation of unity, righteousness and goodwill bring us all together. No one's left out, no one's left behind. Through general alignment of these principles, I believe that change is and can be made to our country. So A wise man once said, righteousness, doing the right thing in the right place at the right time, exalts the nation. It lifts the community up. It boosts the community. And sin is a reproach to any person. So don't be putting your hand up for sin. Put your hand up for righteousness. So as stewards promoting and advocating for change that brings trust and responsibility, we're continually seeking opportunities in our daily lives to make this nation and this country, our suburb, a better place for all of our children to grow up in. We look forward to a future that's inclusive of all peoples and that accommodates all people's cultures, circumstances in a meaningful and productive manner. Productive is a good word. So I'd like to say some words now in Yuggera for everyone. And hello, friend. I'll say it in Aboriginal, then I'll say it in English. Yawa Yuungan, Krumba Bir Nagambli, Balkana Yuggera Jarana, Karamba Naburu Nagambli, Balka Nagambli, Yuggera Jarana. And that means, hello, friends, g'day. Good day to you all. Greetings from our Yuggera country. Great Spirit, God bless you all. Greetings all on our Yuggera country. And to people here today, I extend a warm welcome to Yuggera country and hope that your presence in Yuggera country is safe, healthy and pleasant. God bless you all. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Stephen. That was beautiful. And I love what you said about no one left out, no one left behind as far as parents go. What an important message that ties in so well to what we're going to be discussing here today. So, as I said, this year's forum is entitled Early Support for Families, Hope Starts Here. And as quoted in the flyer, in 2025, flexible, non-stigmatising early support for families is needed more than ever. Support, not surveillance. Help to address the root causes of family stress, to strengthen and to heal. So we're going to divide the forum today into 3 different sections. The first one will illustrate the current problems and challenges. We can't address them if we don't identify what they are and outline them. Secondly, we're going to shift to hope. We'll hear about the things that have worked well for parents, and we'll also hear about the advocacy journey over the past 10 to 20 years. Finally, it's about action. We ask what we, as a group and individuals, can commit to contributing to after today. So the problem, the hope, and then what we can all do. So really great combination of sections today. Now shortly we'll hear from the Honourable Amanda Cam, Minister for Families. But just before we hear from the Minister, I'd like to highlight that we also have parents and alloys joining this forum online. If you are online, welcome. We hope that you get just as connected an experience as you do if you're here in the room. To get a quick sense of where people are who aren't here physically with us, if you have a phone handy and you're joining us, we'd love to know whereabouts you are. So you'll see the link to the Mentee form. So either, if you're joining online, please let us know where you are. If you've travelled from somewhere to be here today, please let us know where you've come from, just so we can see where everybody's from in the room. If you are going on to, you can use the QR code, or you can go to mentee.com and the code is 69546853. I'll say that again, 69546853. Now, Mentee is an anonymous platform, but your answers will go up on the screen. So just so you know, they'll be up there. Apologies to anyone that's watching this at home and you can't do 2 things at once, but we won't be long. So where's everyone coming from today? Lots from Southeast Queensland, Gold Coast, Brisbane and Mianjin, Toowoomba, Burrungum Country, Western Waka Waka, real mixture. Please keep going. If you haven't shared where you're from, it's great for us all to see. Now, I'm really pleased to welcome to her first Global Day of Parents the Honourable Amanda Cam MP, Minister for Families, Seniors and Disability Services and the Minister for Child Safety and Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence. I'd also like to welcome her Director General, Belinda Drew. Minister Cam, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you to Uncle Steve for that welcome to country. It's fabulous to be here with you all. I became a parent 24 years ago. I was 22, and 9 months after I gave birth to my beautiful firstborn son, I became a single mum very quickly and had to adjust to life, raising him by myself with very little family support. And I look back on that, it would be one of the hardest jobs I've done. Much harder, can I tell you, than being the Minister for Families and Child Safety. So that's saying a lot, I think, about parenting. So to all the parents in the room, thank you for what you do each and every day. It is hard some days. Some days it is joyous, some days it is frustrating. And I know through the work of the Queensland Parent Advisory Committee, who I met recently, it is a shared role in which I know that you can connect and you have support. And I'm really pleased through the initiative and through the work of Micah projects, as well as more broadly other services and organisations here that are present, and the work through my department that hopefully you are supported. And if you're not, I want to hear about it. And I look forward to walking that journey with you over the next 3.5 years while I'm the Minister. I would also like just to make acknowledgement of Luke Twyford, who's the Principal Commissioner from the Queensland Family and Child Commission, and we have a strong partnership with the Commissioner through their work and their oversight of my department. Also Belinda Drew, my Director General, who's here with us today, Karen Walsh, the Chief Executive of Micah, and also most importantly to the Queensland Parent Advisory Committee members who work closely with advising me as the Minister. I just wanted to share, I think it's an incredible day to acknowledge and an incredible opportunity to come together and have a conversation. And particularly as you framed the day, Joe, as well in the format that you're looking for. There are lots of challenges, and I certainly want to hear what those challenges are. And I want to understand how government services, and in particular my department, but also those services outside of government that we fund, the role that they play, and the need for at times for there to be flexibility, I think, in understanding what the issues, the needs and the priorities are to support parents and families, because things change. And just as was mentioned in the Welcome to Country, we've just come off the back of COVID. We do have a cost of living issue more broadly across our state and our nation. Things are continuing to increase. Families are being displaced because there isn't enough housing. There's major issues across our community that we certainly are working hard to address. But we need to understand as well what is meeting the needs of parents and what is needed, what you see is needed to meet the needs of your children, and how we can better support children. And as the Minister for Child Safety, I work very much at the pointy end in my department, but as the Minister for Families, the opportunity for us is to engage early and to support early, and to turn our mind and our attention to early support and intervention. But what does that look like? And maybe what that looked like 10 years ago or even 3 years ago on the back of COVID might look differently now, and it may look different to meet your needs into the future. And so I welcome the opportunity for these forums, for an ability to connect. And I noticed all of the communities represented up there and the places that you live. And I come from a place in Micah, and I represent a region that includes Proserpine, and then further north in North Queensland, the communities that I engage with. And then more broadly, we travel further north to the Cape and to the Gulf, where there are very much sadly, vulnerable families who need support. And so looking through your experience and how we can take what you identify and take that through a lens of rural, regional, remote support as well for families, parents and communities is really, really important to me. That these conversations that we have here today and in Southeast Queensland and with those people online and parents and online, that we also start to have those conversations more broadly across our state, because we're a big state, we're a diverse state. And the challenges, I think that if they're shared, then solutions also can be shared. And what may work here could work in another community, or what may work in that community could be shared here amongst a Southeast Queensland community. So thank you for your time. I look forward to listening intently at the conversation, the dialogue that happens today. Thank you for taking the time out of your days to acknowledge this very important day. And for all of you as parents, no matter what experience you've had, what experiences you have to come into the future, the joy and the challenge, just take a moment to acknowledge that it is a pretty incredible honour and privilege to be a parent. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Minister. And great to hear, though, that you're here to listen, that the government is looking for those solutions, and the word flexibility as well, something that flexibility is a muscle that parents really need to have as well. You mentioned joy and frustration. Definitely, I'm sure every parent that's either in the room or tuned in can relate to both of those as well. So parenting is a mixed bag. Sometimes it's brilliant, sometimes it's so difficult. As the mother of a son that's nearly a teenager, I can certainly lean into the difficult side of things at the moment. So we're going to be talking about both of those things today. Now, I'm going to invite Beck and Tina to the stage. They're two parents who are going to share their experience in seeking support for their family when they needed it. Welcome, Beck and Tina. They're two FIN members who are currently members of the Queensland Parents Advisory Committee. And as I've mentioned, we've intentionally divided the forum into these three parts: problems, solutions and actions. And we know the world doesn't get divided neatly in that way, but it's a good way to structure it. So we've kindly accepted the invitation we've kindly asked these people to share their experiences about the problems. I know they're super focused on solutions, but as I said, we can't address we can't address issues unless we know what they are. We can't form solutions unless we know what we're trying to solve. So Beck and Tina, I'm going to stand here so I'm out of your way and people can look at you, not me. But I'm going to start off by asking you some questions.
All right.
So the first one is, would you mind describing your experiences and challenges and when you reached out for help, what was needed? Particularly, was it lots of calls, and what was that turnaround time like? Were you eligible? What were the wait lists like? Those sort of things. What was your experience?
So I'll start. We just want to thank everyone for coming today and listening to our stories. To answer your question, I rang the department and QPS over 60 times in less than 2 months to start the protective parenting, because the burnout and the problems start so quickly, and by the time you get to that point that you just can't anymore, then they remove 2 undiagnosed children. So
I'd have to say, yeah, I'm implementing. It is a really difficult thing, and again, we are focused on the problems. We've got these. Yeah, you got these. So, sorry, I'm extremely nervous, but again, like Beck, see, I had malicious reporting, and I was reaching out constantly, and I thought by staying with services, it would protect me from the inevitable of child safety. But however, what I did find is families are screaming out for supports, but we're not implementing the right supports at the right time. We've got it's a lot of support things that you're not actually eligible for a lot of supports. You're either your child's too young, your child's too old, and then what you might have is support agencies, meaning well, will actually redo their documentation because they can see that there is an area that you need support. However, what happens later on is all of those little things that you do, then that is actually all used against you. So families are being punished, like they're being lured into supports of maybe a free petrol voucher or maybe free speech pathology or...
And the services aren't qualified in trauma and DV and disability and all those things that come, criminal behaviour and addiction, and they're just not qualified enough to support these families that may be just needing that little extra support. So the qualifications like Cert 3 in family services isn't enough to support your families to keep them out of the department. So that extra trauma base, it's learning has to be brought into these services as well to protect these families, to protect these children, to protect these families,
And the right services implemented at the right time, but also the protection of the family, because what's happening is families are reaching out for the support. The implementation of the wrong support then does go against them, and then it's a file that says, we've tried everything for this family, let's remove the children. However, I just want to give an example of implementing wrong support. This support was offered to my family, and I know 2 other families. Now, it was a fantastic support. It was a great program. It was called multi-systemic therapy. It was for young offenders, because see, I had a young offender. But it was implemented at just the wrong time. A year earlier, maybe 2 years earlier, the other families, we would ring each other, the other mothers, and that was an incredible, we made our own support, but we would ring and say, oh, well, they've, said this, we've tried all those things. That support, that program put in a year before, would have been changed everything for all families. So you've got then the finances. A lot of families can't get these programs because we've got billions and billions of dollars going into programs, but they're not being, again, too old, too young, doesn't fit for this family. And so therefore we wait till crisis time, and then it's a really expensive program, but had that program been implemented when, your child is running away from school, or there's things going on in families and they do need support, but they don't need it to be held over their heads later on. And by the time you have the department come in, you have this thing called confirmation bias. And it's probably, I would probably do the same thing, to be honest. You come in, but they're doing their investigation from the outside in. They're not actually getting to know the families. They're not getting to know the families' needs and what they've tried, or things may be very different from 6 months to 6 months. And so families do need support, but they don't need them held over their heads for actually getting those supports. It's like that paper trail that you think that you're doing all the right things, but later then you turn around and it's, sorry, that it's the judgment and assumptions. I think Beck was really, and me personally, it's that judgment. You're really trying your hardest and you know things are not right, so you're reaching out. But that judgment and that assumption and that they look and think, oh, well, we've got all of these reports. There's no transparency. It's it should be a transparent thing. It's I reached out for that because of this, or there's so many QP reports because of this and this. But they come in, they go, well, oh, that mother talks really fast and she's all dishevelled, there's something going on. So it's all the tick boxes and it's not working for families.
And my judgment and assumption came from, my past. Even though I was the one that rang you guys, or QPS and the department, over 60 times because I had a past of addiction and criminal behaviour, the judgment came that I must be using again and that I just can't cope. My children are at risk because I'm, falling off the way again. And it wasn't. It was me actually ringing you guys, notifying you guys, or the department and QPS saying, I'm not coping. But then the assumption of my past came in that she must be off the wagon, and it's like, no, I've just got 2 undiagnosed children that I'm not coping with, and I need help and support, so it's human nature to judge people, but when a parent's actually ringing you to be protective because they've had dealings with the department in the past, that's a big call for a parent to ring the department once again and QPS once again when they've had so much of a past with dealings with them, so the judgment and stigma comes through really hard. And I know that it's not done on purpose, but we really need to rectify that. These parents are trying. They're
But
really
also,
trying.
if you had a support come in, an in-home assessment, so then we can assess families and say, well, what are their needs? What are they struggling with? The implementation of the right support makes a world of difference, saves a hell of a lot of money as well. If you really look at it, that's, I guess, you can look at it and go, well, that mother's struggling with this, or undiagnosed children, so let's implement this support, that support, and then it's a successful thing. And the thing is, we're removing children from families that are not ideal. They need help. However, we don't have the capacity to even care. What's happening to those children out in care is much worse. And we are in an epidemic. We're in a domestic violence epidemic, a housing epidemic, a drug epidemic. There are so many epidemics. I hate to think all the children that are in care that I've had the pleasure of meeting and the things that are happening out there, we need to change it. It's something that, I feel really passionate about. And
we'd like to move on to the next people.
Yes, please.
Who are talking about some of the solution.
Beck and Tina, thank you so much. I'm sure that everybody in the room, everybody online recognises the courage it's taken to come and speak, but about a topic that is so difficult, confronting and sensitive. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights. And some key themes that came out of that were the complexities. There is no one size fits all. It's really important to get to know those families, get to understand their specific needs, get ahead of the curve, get in before things are in a crisis, all of those things. And I'm sure we'll cover a lot of those as we go through this morning. Now, this year we're doing something slightly different. We have Hayley that's joining us, not in the room. She's not here physically, but she's tuned in. Hayley is a graphic artist, and she is going to be our visual storyteller for today. So while we're talking, she's creating images which we'll share along the way and afterwards to capture today's key points, experiences, ideas in visual form so that we can all get on the same page. All of us as humans think differently. Some of us hear information, some of us see things, some like to write it down. By having a visual artist in the room, for those of us that are visual, it's going to really help bring the concepts that we're talking about to life. So as the saying goes, a picture tells 1,000 words. So Hayley will be illustrating the problem to begin with a metaphor, and that metaphor's been around for a long time. It tries to communicate that society could help lots of people earlier, before they stumble down the hill, before they get lost. As Tina said before we get to crisis. But instead we spend lots on ambulances or other expensive crisis responses, and they wait at the bottom of the hill to help people after they've fallen. Hayley will take on our discussion and add throughout the forum, so we will be coming back to Hayley. We're going to have a few dramatic montages from members of FIN today, and the first one is Laura and her group. I now welcome this parent group to the stage to perform the first of these 3 pieces, especially written today. So welcome Laura and your group, and this piece is titled Hope Resourced, because strength is not a solo act. And this part is the problem, which will be narrated by Clara. Welcome.
Thank you. This is not where it starts, but it is where we find her. You are the problem. Mental illness, poverty, disability, and trauma don't make me a bad parent. They make me a parent, in need of support. I've parented in DV shelters. I've parented while hungry. I've parented while grieving. And still, I parented. Not just broken, shattered by judgment, by silence. Just swim. You're only underwater. Just breathe. Everyone else can. Just heal. Hurry up. Never mind, some things take time. We're overworked. Recover. Why can't you? It's not that hard. Just leave. Screaming into silence. Non-compliant, unstable, an addict, abusive, neglectful, failure, refuses, unwilling, unable, survivor, exhausted. I'm trying, but unfortunately, not within our scope. We'd love to help, but we're underfunded. We're not able to help, but we could refer you elsewhere. We can only offer support if you're not involved with child safety. I decided what kind of support you need, and we'll make a referral when you deem you ready. You're out of catchment. Our wait list is 6 months long for domestic and family violence. For the services, sorry, you don't meet the eligibility criteria for our service. The upfront fee for our service is $500. That's your initial consultation, of course. Doors close without slamming. They tell her they're saving what she damaged, but it looks more broken now than ever. I'm a monster on paper, and that's what people will judge, and that's what they're going to believe. You can't see stronger, and it's really hard to bring wiser to court and show it to a judge. And steadier doesn't shout as loud as relapse. You can't photograph more present, and you sure as hell can't quantify what it takes to keep showing up. You get pushed down to a point where you just get back up and buried deep but burning. It's barely there, but it's hers. Reaching inward to the place placed there when her child was born, to the place no one can touch, no one can destroy, and no one can take, and pulls it out like breath, like fire, not giving up, not staying down. I'm not done. Hope.
Thank you, Laura and Clara, and some really powerful words there. And also the difference between calling somebody a bad parent and a parent that needs support, such an important differentiation. So I think it's time to reflect on what we've just seen and those first insights that we also received from Beck and Tina. So what are you thinking? What we'll do is go back to our poll, the Menti poll, and then we might have one or two comments from the floor as well. Think about what you've heard and seen so far today. What does that mean to you? So I'll give you a moment for some quiet reflection. Those of you that want to participate in the poll, please do so. Would anyone like to share anything from the floor? I think we've got somebody that's going to be there with a mic. What are your initial thoughts? Anybody?
I'm not speaking because I love the sound of my own voice, despite popular opinion that may be the case. Pretty much the depiction of what any of that was, everything that is said is so the situation. I don't think that there's one of us as a parent that have not encountered, quite frankly, what I believe to be a ludicrous pathway that is not supportive at all. And I think that the more at the start when he welcomed to country, he said, uniformed approaches. What's that? I have a thumbprint that is not like anybody else's on this earth. I am unique and I am myself. My children are the same individual, unique fingerprint. Nobody else has it but them. You cannot give a uniformed approach if you won't actually acknowledge that every human being is different, and I'm not going to see the world the same as you are. If I've made decisions and I'm in the 98th percentile of intelligence but I have ADHD, that doesn't make me negligent. Asserting negligence is hideous to me. I was unsupported and traumatised by DV on top of neurodivergence that was late life diagnosed. I have kids flagged for the same conditions and I cannot move through the systemic pathways because they're object impermanent. I can't even do your poll because I don't want to be online. I don't know how to use it. That's why I'm speaking verbally, because I'm a verbal processor. I cannot fill in a tick box or a numbered sizing of the thing. My brain will not equate it. I have language. I have words. And if I raise my voice because you're not hearing what I say, that doesn't make me heightened. That means you're not listening. And we need to be heard. And most of us seem to be creatively depicting it. And creativity is beauty. And it shouldn't be shunned just because we don't fit a box. They're those problems and challenges, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those insights. Anybody else in the room like to share your thoughts?
In 2009, when my children were removed, their behaviours were all over the place, and I'd done my homework and I'd contacted Kim's, and there was a waiting list for Kim's. And I was given an appointment for the following week. And then the department came into my life, and through different things that happened, ended up removing the children. And I thought that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing as a parent. And I said to them, you know, but I've reached out for help. I've got an appointment next week. You can ring them up and check, you know. But that wasn't taken into account. And I feel like we're not seen. I feel like people do these notifications because they think that they're going to help the children, help the family. But they don't understand what those notifications then lead to. And there needs to be more education for doctors and teachers and people at childcare centres and things like that that do these notifications. There needs to be another pathway instead of a notification of harm. There needs to be something more in between to say this family has some issues and they need some help. So for an agency to come in, a support agency to come in, and so they go to the family and they knock on the door and they say, instead of saying, we have some concerns, which is the thing that we always hate to hear, we hear that you have some issues and you need some help. How can we help you? How can we support you? Can you imagine what would happen? Can you imagine what would happen to that family if that was done instead of the notification which leads to removal? Because parents are just people. We have full lives. We have full pasts. We have things that we've been through in our lives. And that's all made us this particular person. And then we've parented the way that we were parented. Sometimes we try to parent opposite to that. But the full person is not actually seen. And it's really, really important that we understand that everyone is a full person with a full history, and that all that needs to be understood, and that we need to have support for families, not instant removal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander parents and families, the child protection system has built itself on wanting to come and save us, and it's a broken system which has built services around it with people who never have any contact with Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people other than when they're knocking on their door to ask them about who would know what. I empathise with the two parents before. There is not one Aboriginal family that I know that has not been impacted or touched in some way by the child protection system. That includes myself. And I have worked within the was in the child protection branch in 1999. And I was involved in the 2004 abuse of children in foster care inquiry. I worked in the department, worked on Chapter 7 of that. And yet still, all of these things around protective factors and other things didn't matter. It doesn't matter because the system has fed itself on stereotyping Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families, on removing agency, I think from particularly, and I do need to say too, right, I think that everybody who works in this space and participates in this space only has the best interests of children at the forefront of the work that they do and their intention. But that is what happens with systemic abuse, right? You can't pinpoint one part of it. Until the challenges, I cannot see how we find a way of addressing the overrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, not only in child protection, but also in youth justice, without all parties saying, how do we actually ensure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families have agency and that we aren't here to save them? And again, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we are strong in culture. That cultural safety frameworks and all of these other things that you are training child safety officers or your family inclusion people or any of the things, it's an industry that has been built on the misery of our families. And that's okay if we understand that that's what's happened, and really how do we work to change the practice in a systemic way that empowers families, that respects families, and that protects the children who have this intergenerational trauma. I'll finish with, our children are hyper-vigilant about child safety. It has been weaponised within our families and within our communities. Our children are aware of child safety. And all of our, and let that sink in. Because that we're all grown people. We're all adults. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children are hyper-vigilant about child safety, and that is something that is a wicked problem and a challenge that we need to address. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Some really important points that have come out today, and I think if we distill it down to the common themes, it's that deep listening, hearing, and making people feel seen. It's treating everybody as an individual person. Every family is an individual with its own complexities, needs, its own history, all of those things. There is no cookie cutter approach to this or solution to this. So let's see what else was said online. Parents need to be part of the conversation again, not being done to, done with. So many barriers to entry. Offering that support early. We heard from Beck and Tina about that early intervention. The judgment that gets in the road. Judgment is so detrimental to clarity. Resolving risk rather than removing people from risk. So what are those risks? Again, empowering parents to be part of the solution. Sorry? Oh, yep. And I'm just going to give one more summary and then over to you. And how can we invest so much in solutions that don't work rather than what we know works, supporting families when they need it? We've got someone else on the mic.
Thank you. The thing that was personal to me that stood out from that performance was the comment about we can only support you if you are not already engaged with child safety. And I mean, that was a part of, I am the unsafe parent in our, for my daughter. I'm removed from the home, but she's still with her mother. And we got linked into Family Child Connect, and then the department got involved and I was removed, and the referral to Family Child Connect was cancelled without us being told. It was cancelled behind the scenes, and my wife never found out. She still really needed support. My experience in being involved in having child safety engagement, what has seemed like the one of the root causes of so much distress during the engagement has been this this seeming just lack of actual empathy and genuine attempts to engage and understand in good faith. And that's not synonymous with being ignorant of the risks. Every other organization I've been involved with in this process has demonstrated actual authentic empathy towards me. And the policies in, the policy documents you read for child safety, they sound great. They sound exactly like what I would be looking for. And it sounds like my daughter and my wife would get exactly the help that they need. And I would be spoken to with human dignity. And it seems like the people who are acting out these steps just like they're being told to be empathetic, and then they're just trying to do that and they don't understand what that means. It feels like the department needs support to be able to actually engage with empathy and to be able to treat the people they're engaging with dignity. And I've seen that in other organizations, everyone else we've ever worked with. I'm 6 months into this process. I haven't seen my daughter or heard from her in 10 weeks. But I'm in the best mental shape of my life. I am actually putting my life back together. It's been hugely helpful for me, and it's been devastating for my daughter and my wife. I'm the one that has benefited the most from child safety's involvement because I've been able to go out and get help from other people. But my daughter is miserable, and she is scared of child safety, and I've felt like our engagement with them is inside this enclosed black box of just misunderstanding, low comprehension, inability to be empathetic, and no one else is allowed into that process. And anyone else that could support us is, we were disconnected from support services. Other people who have we've got a disability advocate involved in our case, who has just also been absolutely dumbfounded, shocked by Child Safety's engagement with us and the seeming lack of any ability to comprehend or understand what's actually going on in the situation. And it feels to me like there need to be a way for other more that there is support in place while Child Safety is engaged with a family that has extra training and expertise to be able to manage complex issues well, because the people on the ground doing the footwork don't seem to know how to do it.
Thank you. Thank you for such clear insights. Thank you for sharing what's happened, and those words, empathy, dignity, understanding, again coming through, the complexity of the situation, needing to be able to access that support that you haven't been able to receive at the time when your family most needs it. Thank you so much. So, does anyone else if you have anything else to add to Menti, please do so. And one of the comments that we've got will come from Monique from Finn. So, Monique, are you around? I've got a note that you're going to...
I think what I was going to say has already been mentioned by this gentleman, John, in terms of how often we hear from parents that are involved with child safety that because they're involved, they can't have the supports, or they get supports. You can have supports prior to your involvement, but those supports end once they become involved with child safety. And there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason or continuity in those supports. Yeah, so I was just highlighting what John had already mentioned. So, yeah, but we hear that a lot from parents. That's okay. It's all good. It's all good. Okay, thank you.
But they do. They function like your domestic abuser does. They've isolated me far more than he did. And they're keeping me trapped exactly where I am by what they do. It's hideous. And one can only have cognitive dissonance to feel okay with them. It's not okay.
Yeah.
The dissonance is right. If you actually intelligently think about something, you are deemed as irrational. And it's ridiculous. Sorry.
We've probably got time for... No, I can hear you really well. I think we can hear you clearly. And your message is, it was consistent to what you were saying just before. Could we just have one more mic down here and then we'll move on? But really important points being made here. I was going to ask if everybody is in agreement, but I can see by the nods and everybody aligning in messaging that people are in agreement with the themes that are being raised. We've just got time for this one more point before we move on.
Hi, I'm a mum with a disability, and I'm one of the original children who was raised in Child Safety's first foster care system before 1990. My brain developed while I was in care. I wasn't born with it. Over the years dealing with the department, there's been a lot of failures and discrimination. I have 7 children. When I became a mum, I've had all my children removed. I was punished and judged. There was no help offered. It would have been nice to have people helping me to raise my children at home with support and help, not be raised by strangers. I've also experienced DV and Child Safety kept exposing my locations to my perpetrator and made my life hell. I have come to this month, June, I have not seen my kids for 6 years. And every child that I had, that department has forced me to take birth controls. And in 2011, I was forced to have an abortion. So where was my right to be a mum, to have that child and to carry on, but instead I was forced to have a termination. And over the years, I have not received no help or like cop towards discrimination and judgment. The Disability Royal Commission went through all my file. They have discovered a lot of disability discrimination from the department. And to this day, I'm still seeing the department still very broken. I'm still seeing children being removed. And every year I'm getting apologies and sorries, but I'm still seeing children experience the same harm what I did when I was a child in the system.
Thank you for sharing. I'm so sorry. As I mentioned, Hayley, our illustrator, is going to be documenting in a visual way the themes that have come through today. So Hayley, I'm calling on you. How's that going? So we've got the ambulance theme, the problem, looking for help, not removal, investigation from the outside in instead of the other way round, when the wrong support gets used against you, confirmation bias, people that don't qualify for support. Lots of different themes that have come up in our conversation, in Menti, in the brave guest speakers today. Would everybody agree that that's a fair picture of the problem? Okay. Thank you, Hayley. So, hope is so important in any conversation, whether it's around child safety, domestic and family violence, substance abuse, homelessness, all of those things. Hope really is such an integral part of this conversation. So we're going to move on to talking about hope and solutions. We want everybody to go away from today's session feeling empowered, feeling that there's action that they want to take, that they can take. So we're going to start talking about hope. But before that, I just want to draw everyone's attention to the postcard that you have today. Should be on the slide, but for the past couple of months in Queensland, a survey's been running for parents to have their say about their child safety experience over the last 5 years. It's being run by an independent research company and it closes on the 30th of June, so we've got about 4 weeks. So we encourage those of you that haven't to take part in the survey, and those of you that know someone that hasn't to let them know, spread the word. This is the first ever opportunity to take part in something like this in Queensland. So now we're going to move on to a panel discussion, and I'm going to introduce Jenny, who's going to facilitate the panel this morning. We're going to move on, as I say, to talking about hope and solutions, looking at what we've tried, what we've learned, and what works for for parents. So Jenny Whitworth is the coordinator of the Family Inclusion Network for South East Queensland, which is part of Micah projects. Jenny, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thanks, Jo. I welcome Kylie and Karen and Jodie along onto the panel as well. Thank you everyone for being here today and for the presentations and performances and thoughts so far. I'll quickly do an introduction and then we'll get into a chat, and we've got that hope as our theme. So Brett and Dom and Mel are all members of the Family Inclusion Network. Brett and Dom, you've spoken at things like this before, and we went about meeting you after that, and we've been lucky to have you contribute to Finn's work for a little while, most recently on that parent survey, actually. You helped us with that. And Mel, you attended the parent advocacy training in 2023 and have been advocating at a few events since then. So thanks for taking the time to come along today. This side of the panel, Karen Walsh, CEO of Micah Projects, and Professor Jodie Curry from the Faculty of Health at QUT, and welcome Professor Kylie Valentine, Director of Social Policy Research Centre and the Centre for Social Research in Health at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. Thank you for coming along. We are focusing on hope, and in doing that, we wanted to reflect on how many years we've been trying and advocating for a better early support system, and to maybe look at some of that to see what we've learned and what we could perhaps do differently in the future. So building on, Job, what you were saying before. But to start off, could I get some examples from you, Mel, Brett or Dom, about things that have worked, things that you have found helpful in your parenting experience?
That is on. Okay. Yes, so I haven't actually gone through with child safety, thankfully, but I was a young mum. I had my son when I was 17, and it's scary at an older age, but very much scary when you're younger. Finding out when I was 16 that I was pregnant, never been to a GP by myself, had to figure out even just the basic things of how do I book an appointment, how do I get to an appointment at 16, and that came with a lot of barriers, trying to figure everything out on my own at that stage. Luckily, I knew some people that knew some people, and I got in with Micah Projects Young Mums and Young Women, who offer an integrated support service with a midwife team and youth workers, which helped a lot, like figuring out and learning the medical side of things so young, but also having the youth workers there to help find, if I needed other services, to find those services, because it can be very difficult to find any service. But yeah, just having them there to guide me and hold my hand through it.
Well, Dom and I were actually very lucky. We were approached by an Indigenous support agency who took control of our whole case. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it, but it's called Delegative Authority. And they basically sideline child safety while they take up on your case, and you sort of hear and deal with them directly. So we were very fortunate that I had identified as Indigenous and been able to get that service provided to us. Prior to that, we didn't know about it. We didn't engage with them to find it. They sort of found us upon finding out we're Indigenous and that. And yeah, I'm just very thankful that we did find somebody who was willing to reach out or change the case, because as just like we heard from that John fella before, I really admire your ability to say what you had to say before about that, because it was on point. Prior to that, we weren't very engaged with anybody or anything. It was just child safety, leaving us in that little black box that you described before, and finding no real way out or no real way to fight back or argue against any of the decisions that were made. So, yeah, we were very fortunate to have them reach out to us and helped our case a lot. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mel and Brett and Dom. You can chime in anytime. So to this side of the panel, how do we start to get this shifted? I reflected back on the old pyramid, the child protection early intervention pyramid that we'll put up on the screen in a minute. And I did hear, you know, it was yourself, Minister, talking about the pointy end. And so in wondering, as advocates and as families who are joining us, how do we take this moment. Queensland is changing, the world is changing. We have a huge group of influential people in the room. How do we take this moment and make something change? So is it models that we need? Is it different language? Kylie, can I throw to you, and just for those who need a refresher on this old pyramid, what is that about? And to the whole panel, do you think it's useful to have models to help us understand services and where they fit?
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. I'd just like to begin by acknowledging that we're all on stolen land, and to pay tribute to First Nations people everywhere, and to everyone here who has shared their story and who is working so hard. Somebody told me the other day the difference between hope and optimism was optimism is that you just think everything's going to be all right. Hope, you work towards things changing because you know that they won't unless you work, but you have the force and energy to do that. So it's so powerful to hear the heartbreak and strength of everybody here. I'm blown away by you all, so thank you all very much. And it's such a privilege to be here. The pyramid. So in theory, the pyramid is a great idea. I won't lecture, I promise. But the idea of the pyramid is that everybody needs support, and that some people will need more support than others, and that there are a smaller number of services that need to be delivered really well and probably quite expensively to quite a small group of people, but that it's worth it because it's going to intervene at those people who need it most. And importantly, where really good stories come from, it's in places where it's strong all the way down. So the universal services which are available in theory to everybody, so health, schooling, housing, really are available to everybody, and the public services are good enough that even rich people want to use it, because rich people get treated pretty well by service systems. So it's important to have a good public system and a good universal system so that problems don't escalate. In theory, it's a great idea. In practice, what happens is what we've heard a lot this morning, which is that there's this sort of frantic inflexibility about where in the pyramid you fit, and our services are only allowed to support you if you tick these boxes and you're in these categories. And so I think that this is a really good model for describing how services should work, but what happens in practice, it's a way of categorising people and putting people in one sector or another, and not recognising that it changes over time. Like, this is a two-dimensional thing. It looks really static. It looks really fixed. It looks like where you are is where you are. And also that if you have particular needs in one area, they're going to all be the same. So if you're early intervention, you're early intervention, and if you're crisis, you're crisis. And that's just a kind of global thing, whereas in fact it's much more complicated than that. So I think that the difficulties are around those kinds of senses of what early intervention and what primary should look like. And there's this idea that early intervention and starting before things get difficult is often really unrealistic, because people have really complicated lives. And what looks like early intervention in real life is going to be a lot messier than that diagram there as well. So there's also often a disconnect between what, as John said so eloquently, what things look like on paper, which is about right support, right time, no wrong door, responsive, all of those things, and what happens in real life, because the imagining of what real life looks like and what early problems look like is so different from the complexity and messiness and beauty of life. And again, thank you all for sharing those stories. So.
Thanks, Kylie. Jodie and Karen, you've worked in this area of frantic inflexibility for a while. And so what is it that we need to do here? Is it defining things better? Is it getting common language? What are some of the ideas that you have for moving towards hope?
When I look at the triangle and on the tertiary point, I think that we have an opportunity now to look at, and again, I will say, the workers within departments and all the things that they do, everybody's trying their best. I don't mean to be, right? But at a higher, bigger level, there's that saying, right? He who holds the purse holds the power. Where does we live in a capitalist system. Where does most of the money sit? Most of the money sits at a assessment level with CSO and the tertiary systems, right? How do we... The world, according to Jodie, is the tertiary system and the staff within that need to be retrained, just like all other things, you know, like AI is changing the world, like things are changing the world. Global developmental delay, mental health, all of the things that we were talking about, children not succeeding at school, you know, the open conspiracy of education. You must send your children to school or you won't get paid, or this will happen and that will happen. And yet on the next page then, you know, we're you know, supporting children who have committed suicide from being bullied at school, and where children are passing NAPLAN, and, you know, it's this open conspiracy of, you know, it's the push and pull that we as a society have as a whole. We have an opportunity to look at what... I love child protection. I love good practitioners of child protection. Those who can really support children to live in safe environments. Those who can have respectful conversations with parents that just at this point in time, your child can't be with you. And now your child is going to go to your sister. But don't let your relationship with your sister fall apart. We're going to make sure then, you know, that we have an opportunity at a tertiary end to look at what does a new child safety officer look like with all of these different complexities. And because health isn't going to pick it up, right? Health's going to say that's your problem. We talk about children, and again, right, it's rhetorical, eh? You know, they can't go, they're not school ready, they're not, you know, they've been in the system, this has happened to them. It's rhetorical. So what is the training, what is the hard decision that needs to be made about this is what is required for workforce, this is what is required from TAFE-free places, you know, not in a good way. I don't mean to be, this is my hope and my, you know, the thing about what's the opportunities that we actually can develop training for good child protection practitioners who can have the tough conversations, who have because family is centred to the child, right? The child will always come look for you, no matter what, at different points in time. And whether or not they come look for you to tell you they never want to talk to you again, it's neither here nor there, right? But really, I think the tertiary, and we can talk, you know, and I agree, right? I think that the primary and secondary part for me is really, you know, that's that whole of government, whole of system approach as well around prevention, early intervention. When I think about what hasn't happened in this last 20 years is really that targeted point of what is happening within the tertiary system and how do we support the development of really good child protection practitioners. That's I think, that's a hopeful thing that I think that we could do.
Well, I've always struggled with this pyramid because I never knew where anyone sat in terms of the relationship I was having with parents in being a support worker, whether it was a youth worker or a family support worker, and what parents were saying. So for the hope for me is that your voices have been heard more. And I think that we often underestimate the insight of parents, even when children are removed and even when child safety has been involved. And whilst we focused on problems, there's also been parents who have given insight over the years about that the involvement of child safety saved their life and saved their children. and saved the relationship that they now had with them because they came back together. But the problem is systemically that's not the descriptor. Systemically, it's a lot more divided, and I think we all play a part in that, because some of the policy areas in child protection are so polarised, and this diagram back in the day did create a lot of polarisation in after the CMC inquiry. I'm letting my age come out here, but I've been part of all those inquiries, and early intervention, we have failed really to understand what we're talking about. And I think some of the way that parents now are giving insight, you're talking about your needs and you're talking about what would be useful to meet those needs. The conversation of inquiries, unfortunately, has always been about risk and about the system and how the system can prevent the risk of abuse in care, was the Ford inquiry, abuse in detention centres. The CMC, was supposed to get some balance back, but it didn't. And I think it's a really hard to find the right framing of what we mean, because we're not saying that it is a risk-free journey either. And a lot of parents have said that. A lot of parents have said, I needed to really start to look at what was happening. But they just didn't expect it to go down the path that led to so many years of trauma and no reunification. I mean, in the old days of this pyramid being prevention, it was prevention. Primary was supposed to be no services at all, just putting out there a value base that is valuing parents, valuing families, and not really identifying the problem enough to say, well, people do come to services because they do feel they have a problem, or they're in a crisis, or they have a need that hasn't been met. And then the secondary was always an argument. At what point was it in the community? Did people have to have a problem? Could just anybody walk in? And of course we all knew that people were struggling with much more difficult realities than that, whether it was your neighbourhood centre, whether it was a service that just worked with whoever walked in the door. But as the complexity of life in our society has changed, there is a need to target where we put services and how those services can function. And one of the things that's always been a difficulty for us was that breaking down of thanks for coming. The breaking down of this, when you can provide support and when you can't. And I know all through the CMC recommendations and the partnership discussions that occurred, we never really broke through with that if people need something, that's what we should start with. And of course, our universal services are now not that universal. They're not meeting the needs of the population as we know it, because the population of families, we're all different. We all face adversity with different resources. So, and then of course we've got to support the families in the tertiary end, and whether it's reunification or whether it's trying to prevent kids staying in care longer. But I think that the arguments are so polarised, and it's often it's a discussion about removal or not removal, when that isn't the discussion. The discussion is really, how do we put the family at the heart of it and not just the child, and how do we respond to a family, their extended family, in a community, because every community's got different services available. So in terms of hope, I think there are some more discourses that allow us to think in circles, and circles that connect to each other rather than a triangle which is so linear, which did lead us down a path of being so polarised. And it's us against child safety, or child safety against the NGO sector, or against parents. We can't really fix a system with that. We've got to move beyond those sorts of polarised discussions.
Thanks, Karen. So we're looking for another drawing that's got lots of interconnecting circles on it, which I might actually have. But over to this side, were there any reflections, Dom, on what you've heard, and the next drawing that is going up is kind of what Karen is saying. Whenever we advocate for more services needing to be flexible and there for parents, often we're told, well, there's a lot out there. There's a lot out here, and here's one done in Texter, because there's lots of neighbourhood centres, and there's play groups, and there's early years places, and family and child connect and family wellbeing and intensive family support and So on paper, there's a lot out there. Your experience?
Well, what we've always said that, because we were lucky enough, because Brett identifies as Indigenous, so we were able to get refocused to step in. But that should be available to everyone. The DA, the delegated authority should be available to anyone, whether you're Indigenous, Chinese, whatever.
And I think Joe said it pretty well earlier when you said there's no cookie cutter for this whole, every family and every individual who's going to be affected by needing some sort of support or having child safety in their life needs to be looked at as an individual case, as things might be different for this person, for this family, so that they can adjust the right needs to appropriate for the right person.
Yeah. So that flexibility is one of the key words, and also this opportunity in time with the Director General and the Commissioner and other thinkers in the room. I wonder about the question of dollars. Is that key to this argument? And we are reflecting intentionally, Kylie. That's why we invited you along. You wrote a report back in 2007, and that was when I was with QCOS, and Karen was president of QCOS at the time, and we were trying to advocate for more early support. The paper is, it's full of programs and evidence and principles, but it also is talking about the dollars and doing what advocates do. We wanted to simplify the message. So one of the messages that came out was based on that report that said, if you spent more on these early supports, or if you moved the money, as Jodie was saying, if you moved the money to early supports, you could save $11 billion because the crisis expenses wouldn't be there. For advocates, what is it that we need to do? Is the financial argument still valid? Is it the be-all and end-all, or where do we go now in terms of cut-through?
Yes, so I was looking at that report again, which I don't generally do because going back to your old work can be not a great experience. But the report is full. I mean, one of the depressing things, I know we're in the hope session, one of the depressing things is that the report is full of statements like services need to be delivered by well-trained people in well-resourced environments that are flexible and that meet people's needs rather than deliver a service. And it's about relationships, and it's about time, and it's about safety and looking for signs of safety, not just risk. So that was in 2007, and those messages were not new then, and they're still really pressing now. One of the things that is different, I think, is that at the time, there was a really strong push for this idea of evidence-based policy and the idea that a lot of money was being spent on programs and services that weren't effective. And so what we needed to do was focus more on what was working. And that really put people into a very, very difficult bind, which I think we're still feeling the effects of, because the things that look like they save money are really rigorously, inflexibly, stupidly designed to keep people in and out and only take the people who will work, because multi-systemic therapy is a kind of great example. I think it was Bear Cortina who said it before. It's one of the things that's been shown to work, and if it's done properly and it's done well and it's done by really well trained people in the way that it's needed, it can be very effective. But they're big ifs, and so that's why we kind of went down this path, I think, of looking at what worked and what was going to save money, and that led to a whole lot of boxing things in. One of the things that I think is really fantastic about what's changed since then is that at the time, those kind of models of expertise were really uninterested in what parents thought. They were interested in the welfare of children, and they were interested in what service systems did, but there was no interest at all in listening to the stories that I have heard this morning, and that, you know, people have always heard, but they weren't recognised as valid as forms of expertise. So in the sense that there is now recognition that parents are experts and that families are, have expertise, not just in what's happened to them, but in the way that systems work and what works and what doesn't work in terms of sort of systemic stuff. That is a big difference from 2007. And what it means is that those messages that have always been in the kind of evidence-based program stuff about the importance of relationships and the importance of flexibility and the importance of not putting people into categories and never letting them out and only supporting them if they're in those categories are much harder to ignore now. So I think that there is still a real need to persuade people who have the money about the value of spending, because it is such a competitive environment and because child protection is so fraught and there are so many terrible stories about things going wrong. So there is this real urgency always to not repeat the mistakes of the past and to not do things that aren't working and to spend the money where it will do some good. So there is that real sort of balance between not speaking only in terms of money, but in terms of speaking of the compelling financial as well as human needs to implement things.
Yep. So the financial as well as the human, and that there is expertise to draw on, and a lot of expertise that hasn't been listened to over the last few decades. And so Mel, Brett and Dom, I think we've got a little bit less time than we originally planned, but
that's because you sort of talk too much.
No. I'm just wondering about some of the successes, the strengths that you guys have been talking about that you're really proud of, that you've achieved in your parenting journey. And I guess the follow-up question to that is, did you need a service or a resource to do that, or do people have what they need and the rest of us just need to get out of the way?
Well, I think when Refocus stepped in for us, they listened to us. Like I said, the department didn't listen. They don't want to know your problem. They want to try and fix it by taking children away. But they actually listened, and I think that makes a hell of a difference. Just someone listening to what's happening, and then they were able to fix a problem. Within 2 years, we had our kids back full time, and we'd been with the department 4 years prior to that. Yeah, so it
was a quicker change with a different group.
Yeah, and I mean, if you feel like you have somebody on your side as well, who's going to go and pitch that idea up, maybe you can have visits next week, or instead of just being told no, and then you feel like that's your final answer. You don't feel like you have anything to say back to them. So having that support, as well as, I suppose, each other as well. But yeah, it was definitely a benefit to have somebody on board, because before, having any of those agencies or anybody willing to help, it did feel a little bit hopeless. However, when no parent would ever give up completely on trying to get their children, it did feel like false hope at times, you know. So having them with us and stand by us without judgment or without that, you know, coming from them, that it's hard to see anything would ever become positive if the same people who were saying that you couldn't do this or didn't do this right weren't willing to tell you exactly what you were doing wrong and willing to say this is how we're going to help adjust that, you know. So
someone standing by you and with
definitely.
you. Yeah,
That's
thank
right.
you.
Just a bit of support.
Yeah, as I was saying, I was fortunate not to go with child safety. I had that early intervention, which I'm very big on, early intervention. And I think just as everyone has said, we don't get a handbook. And I was in a very not great place when I was pregnant. I was sleeping on my son's mother's lounge room floor on a mattress, going between houses. And I think without the support of my youth workers, that's probably where I'd still be. I wouldn't have had any help with any housing, even just putting food on the table for everyone. And thankfully now I've gotten over all those barriers and I've gone on and I'm now a youth worker as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mel. So the right people, trained and standing by you. We will have to wrap this conversation up, but I want to throw back to Karen and Jody for what is it that we need to do next. If you've got any ideas about what we need to do next, or if there are any key questions to the policy minds in the room. So hope, optimism and action. We like to inspire, but we need to do something now. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think we can fix any system on its own. So you can't fix child protection or support children to thrive in their families if they're not housed, if they're not accessing healthcare, accessing specialist services like you just mentioned about Refocus, or it's a combination of all things. But I do think the challenge for governments is to become more focused on being, I love that term, the preventative state, which is about saying that the resources of government has to meet the needs of citizens and the basic needs of all citizens, and housing and, you know, having an income, having access to healthcare and many other things. But government can't do everything, so it's not saying that. But I don't think that child safety can be building houses, and I don't think you can have a child and a family to thrive without having a house. So I mean, it's like a broken record. I suppose many people in government say it. We've advocated until we get a more collaborative way of government setting policy and not being competitive around what's going to get the most money now. You could say, oh, well, you know, housing's getting a lot of money now, but is that housing targeted? Is it really where it needs to be, and is it of the built form that it needs to be for children to thrive in the lowest incomes with people with the most challenges? And I think we do have to take into account now that we didn't before is the intergenerational impact of trauma, and for First Nations and for everyone, that is another challenge for people to, you know, push through. And it's something that many years ago it was unsaid and unknown, but it is something that we've got all these inquiries, and we'll have another one where this is what will come out again. So I think somehow we've got to find a way for that collaborative approach and for the NGO sector to be collaborative in the solutions and listen and hear parents at the centre of it with their children.
I haven't met the Director General properly today, but hi. The child protection system is half for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And yet, where? And where are the, all of the things. So when people, raise about delegated authority, I went to Canada in relation to a project that we had done around unborn notifications out of the Logan Hospital. And this mob, I accidentally met this lady at a pizza shop when I was there for another thing around mental health. It was crazy, right? But anyway, I ended up in Toronto. They don't have unborn notifications, they have apprehension orders, they're called, and they have photos of women where they remove their children when they are born. They have photographs, there's a board of photographs in hospitals. And the thing about that research will show over and over all across the globe that very few babies are intentionally abused under, newborn children under the age of 3 months old particularly. And yet high rates of unborn notifications. So this is I tell you this because this is a bit of my thing, right? Because then I go back to the rights of the baby. And nobody knows. And so to any parent in the room, and I'm sorry if this is triggering for you because of the, I can't even imagine. The right of the baby, then that's their, and I say, that's their first ceremony. And then what is happening to their synapses? What is happening around their bonding? What is this, this thing about intergenerational trauma and all these other things, right? So anyway, they asked us then to come because we'd done this great work with child safety and Department of Health at Logan Hospital, and they asked us to go and have a yarn over there. Anyway, what we don't accept here in Australia is that half the system is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, and there is not Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representation across decision making, across where the money goes, how the money goes, any of those things, right? So in Canada, they do have, and this is where, thinking around delegated authority and other things, they do have a system that runs for First Nations people. And it's, and I don't know necessarily the makeup of, but, if it's a directed, if it's just the mirrored thing, yes, same authority. Sorry, Jen, I know about time. Anyway, I got to talk to blackfellas there, or, First Nations people there. And they're saying about this terrible, this blackfella child safety sort of thing. And I said to them, why don't can you go to the mainstream one? Like, can you, because they're saying they take our kids, all the stuff that we hear now, right? And so, do they, and their response was, we wouldn't, our outcomes would be heaps worse if we went through the mainstream system. Our children would be in, and so this mob didn't know me, or any of the things as such. Our children would be in care longer. We would have less of a say. We would have more of our children in residential care because they don't think that we can look after our children in our families. We would have more children in detention. More of our children who are in the child protection system would be in the youth justice system. And I just sat there and listened, and this is what we have here. From that, so my hope is that eventually the system will see that we can protect our children. We can, provide we can protect our children ourselves. So that's what I would hope.
Thanks, Jo. So the strong messages, thank you so much. The strong messages from here have been about collaboration and meeting people where they are at, what is it that they need, and flexibility, and also a rethink in terms of how this system works with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and families. So I'd like at this point to thank everyone for that kind of walk down memory lane of prevention and early intervention, but we're here now and we're going to make this next phase change the course of the way that pointy end of the system looks. And the reason we can do that this time, as you pointed out, Karen, is that we have additional huge expertise in this project, in this quest, and it's the expertise of Dom, Brett, Mel, and the FIN members who are going to come up again shortly. So this time it will change, and that's the reason why. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. That was real and raw, as this event always is. Thank you for those insights. Now we're heading into stage 3 of the event, and one of Kylie's phrases of wisdom was the difference between optimism and hope is that hope involves action. So let's start thinking about what those solutions and action really look like. Again, we're going to put back to the poll, to the mentee. So if you've got ideas on what solutions, hope, actions that we can take from today, what would they be? Now, again, for those of you that would like a reminder about the code, it's 6954 6853. So that's 6954 6853 if you want to contribute your thoughts. I'll give you a moment to think. Family-led decision-making, yep. Putting families, those people that need the support and protection at the heart of everything. In-home support. Collaboration, cooperation, a couple of words that have come through really strongly today. Trauma-informed or trauma-aware supports. You know, the importance of having someone turning up and saying, are you okay? What do you need from me? That empathic approach. Less short projects. Training. We've heard that a few times today. Housing, safe and secure. Embracing people that need help for coming forward to asking for it. And the other thing that's coming through there is, and we've got partnership, but understanding all the ingredients, the support, the housing, the education, all of those different ingredients that are important. This needs to be come at from a range of different avenues. There's not just one fix. Early interventions coming up again. Peer support, peer workers, people that have actually been there, understand it. Advocacy, lots of powerful solutions, ideas, and some inspiration there as well. We're now going to watch another of the parents' montages from Laura and the crew. So I welcome you all back to the stage and look forward to seeing the second part of Hope Resourced, because strength is not a solo act. And this one will be narrated by Laura.
Then a voice, quiet but certain. Me too, it says. I've been there too. I've been you too. I know the weight. I know the silence. I know how you're feeling. I won't tell you to just keep doing what you're doing. I'll tell you, I see you. You're not the only one. Let's walk this bit together. Together they reach. Because once you've been shattered and still stood up, you stop waiting for easy, and you long ago gave up on fair. And one day, one stayed. Didn't quote the manual, didn't ask her to prove her worth one more time, but instead said, I want to understand. We'll support you to get childcare. We can help you and your children access safe housing. Said you shouldn't have to do this alone. Didn't fix everything, but it didn't disappear either. They believed change deserved to come, that it could come, and that it must come. And when hope flickered, they shielded it with both hands. But then the funding's cut, or the bureaucracy catches up. Well, that's not policy, and this isn't the way we do things. With over 35 cases, I said cases, not people to look after, there's no capacity to do more and more and more. And with people pushed over your desk like numbers, like spreadsheets without names, and referrals that go nowhere because you can't refer to houses that haven't been built, or to mental health services that tell you you're not actually feeling bad enough yet and ask you to just wait a little bit longer. But as she parented under cameras in the visiting room, as she mothered in 1 hour blocks, and drew pictures of her child to put on the wall, in place of school photos that never came, she was acutely, beautifully aware that this time she wasn't alone. Hope is not soft. It is steel. It is scarred, and it is still here. So even in the worst moments, she wrote the letters and the birthday cards and put them in a drawer. And healing came anyway, because hope doesn't flood in, it trickles. It gets in the gaps the cracks made. It insists. It flickers and it fights. And her story didn't end in defeat, and neither did theirs, and neither will ours or yours. Sometimes love isn't enough, but love with support, that's a revolution.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone. That was beautiful. Okay, let's go back to Hayley. Hayley, how are you going with your image? So we're going to have a look at Hayley's depiction of the solution. Have we got that coming up? Oh, wow. The listening coming through again. That resolution, resolving things rather than removal. Flexibility, that's a word that's come through clearly today. Respecting conversations. Amazing, Hayley. So, let's have a think about some of the points that have been raised already. What solutions are there? We heard some words of wisdom from the panel. The fact that we don't know what we don't know often. We've talked a few times about the parenting handbook, but there's also not a child safety handbook either. It's not something that you understand until you're in the system. And it's important that people have that advocacy, those experts leaning in, relevant advocacy according to someone's specific situation. Understanding that frameworks are important, but they can't lose the human side of this situation. Understanding that everybody is trying to do their best in this difficult situation. But sometimes in following process and frameworks, we might lose sight of empathy, kindness, understanding and listening. The importance of putting family at the heart of everything, meeting individuals' needs, and making sure that the system is suitable to the people that it's there to support and protect, whatever their needs, whatever their background, and particularly considering the needs of First Nations peoples. So what are the suggestions we've got here in the room? And for those that are there remotely, what would you like to contribute through the Menti panel? Now, for those of you that are here face to face today, we're going to have the roving mic again. What solutions do people have? What can you think of that you'd like to share with the group as actions we might take away, for considerations for the Director General that we have here today? What would you like to share? Anybody? Raise your hand.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to reflect a temporary job that I had in child safety, and some of the problems which everyone has identified. So to solve those problems, I think I have dealt a couple of Aboriginal families which were my clients, and I was visiting them, and there are a lot of problems that I thought it wasn't the right system working for this child safety. So one of the families they had, they placed 4 children with a grandparent, and she was wonderful. She did a wonderful parenting job with the 4 children. The problem there was the children, they were 5 years, and those children never been to kindergarten or the daycare or anywhere in the education system. I was shocked. And one day I said, and all they did was they take the children to the park, meet the parent. That's what they're meeting. I took the children, I'm going to make a change for this one. And I said, hi, children, well, what about we go to a library today? And they all agreed. They said, we have never been to the library. And this, they spent the 3 hours, 2 hours with me at the library, and the mother never turned up. So we spent a good time. The children enjoyed. The next visit to then I dropped the children to the grandparents. And the next time when I visited, and they said the children couldn't stop talking about the library. They all needed to go back there. And these children said, who is she? We just need her to take us back to the library. And when I went, the grandmother waited for me, and she communicated that to me. See, the children never been to school. And that's one thing I would say, the education system for the Aboriginal families, they have been shuttered, and they have never been introduced. The children are locked in the places where they could never access to the education system. And this is happening here at the moment. And it's only a couple of years ago that I was with child safety, and there was another problem. The children, when I went, and I was given some of the difficult clients with me. And one boy who came out of the detention center, and the manager called me, said, nobody can handle that child. He's very, very difficult. And okay, I met both the child and the mother. They were relating different stories. And then I communicated. This boy, he said, I love mom. So many times when I met them, I love you, mom. I love you. My heart just broke. And they were never allowed to go for Christmas together. I had my opportunity of putting my report for both families, and I gave my recommendations. These were some of the things that I feel the system has to be reviewed and implemented for the betterment of the children. I'm talking from the children's point of view at the moment. That's all I would say. The system in child safety is just not working. And that system needs to be reviewed and working for everyone, for the children, for the education, and for the betterment of the family. And that's all I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Your last few words, so important, betterment of the family. That's what we're all here to talk about today. Anyone else got something that they'd like to contribute?
No. Joe, that's the last one.
The last one.
Thank you. I think we're all in agreement that the children and parents, caregivers, grandparents, support workers, what would be the solution is a mentor, a designated support person for both the children and parents and extended family support people together to follow from the very first day that they're in care to reunification if possible. And to hear then stories like your first trip to the library, those sort of new beginnings, new memories, I think is vitally important, which is not happening on the ground at the moment. It's very hit and miss. Thank you.
Thanks, Carla. Just a quick call out to those people that are joining us today from interstate. So there was a lot of places on the Menti screen talking about South East Queensland, but we do have people all across Australia that are joining us today. Finn colleagues and allies from other states. So a big call out to all of you, just so you know that the family inclusion movement is something that extends across Australia, often volunteer run, sometimes funded in various ways. It's still very much a fledgling social justice movement, but some very powerful shoots that are emerging all the time. If you're looking to find out more, there's a website, familyinclusionnetwork.com.au, for those of you that aren't part of a network and would like to be. So lots of feedback, lots of calls for action. I think Hayley's captured things really well. After the session, Finn will email out a thank you and we'll keep this space open for ideas and actions. So this isn't a short-term project. It's already been going for some time. It's a long-term advocacy topic that's due for real action. And I know that Finn and Micah are really committed to this work. If you would like to be on Finn's mailing list and you're not already, Jenny, what's the best way to do it? info.fin@micahprojects.org.au, if anyone. Thank you. All right, the final of our dramatic montages now. For the final time, we're going to welcome the parent group back to stage for part 3. And it's around a call for action. So Leanne, I believe you're coming to be the narrator for this one.
And suddenly, there's a shift. Not seismic, not loud, but enough. A voice from the grey, not from a peer, not from a friend, not even from a worker, but from inside the system. It says, we've never done it that way, but maybe we could. Or what if we did? Or she's doing her best. What more could we be doing? No applause, no headline, just compassion, respect, and it becomes someone who saw a parent, not a problem. It becomes the service that calls back, that asks you for solutions when they run out of ideas, that refuses to be the wrong door anymore. One small piece of hope, then another, and another. A program that is a one-stop shop for domestic and family violence, disability, housing and health. Intensive home visiting family support program for caregivers exhibiting intergenerational disadvantage and multiple stresses. Services that stay involved if the children are removed, or at least until another service is put in place. Respite that is available to families struggling with varied issues. Resourcing support, embedding programs that have positive findings in terms of child, parent, and family outcomes. No one recovers alone. No one heals without help. And this mosaic of hope is woven by many hands. This is what can be when systems hold families. This is the power of walking with, of listening without judgment, of believing in recovery even when hope seems far away. This is the part we imagine, the one we work for, when the case plan isn't a set of ever-moving goalposts or meaningless promises, when the service isn't a threat, and when we can sigh with relief when the knock on the door comes, when we, the parents, are seen not as a risk but as a resource, when the barriers that prevented us from being the parents we dreamed of being are broken down, because healing is not conditional, because dignity is not earned, and worth cannot be removed. It doesn't take magic. It takes policy. It takes people, and it takes hope.
Some really powerful words, and I love that line, seeing a parent, not a problem. Now it's time to wrap things up, and there's a long list of thank yous, so I'll keep it brief. Thank you to all the speakers and the performers today. Something that we can always guarantee when walking into this room on Global Day of Parents is honesty, being raw, being real, being frank, and some really heartfelt conversations. And I think that shows the ferocity of being a parent, the fact that being a parent is driven by deep love, deep care, and that has come across so strongly today. So thank you to everyone that's played a part. Thank you to the amazing Fin South East Queensland team for creating another wonderful forum. Thank you to all of you who've joined online. You're absolutely vital for us to be able to grow this event and expand the movement. Thank you to everybody that's come here today, all of you that are in the room. It's great to see some old faces and some newcomers. And also we'd like to acknowledge and appreciate Queensland Government for funding Fin South East Queensland. So thank you. Please don't forget that survey. If you'd like to participate, that would be great. If you can spread the word, that would be terrific as well. Don't forget it closes on the 30th of June. And finally, huge thanks to the powerful network of Fin parent members. This is a group who participate in so many different ways: writing, coming to consultations, participating in training, joining committees, and speaking at events like this. And let's not overlook the bravery that this takes. Every time you participate, someone's perspective is shifted. Someone changes how they work. So you are making a difference, and thank you. So everybody, happy Global Day of Parents. To those in the room, please stick around for some group photos. There's some yummy lunch out in the foyer if you're hungry and you'd like to stick around. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.